All right, hello everybody. Today I have something for you that went across my feed. I don't know if you guys will be interested in this or not, but if you are interested in Star Trek and you haven't heard about this new short film that just came out recently, um, I thought I'd talk a little bit about it. So the film is called 765874 Unification. It's being produced by this OTOY group as part of the Gene Roddenberry Archive. That's something that they're working on. So, I just saw this video, or I saw people talking about this video. I went and saw it myself. It's basically a send off for, Captain Kirk. Because, well, the last, old Star Trek appearance of Captain Kirk was in Star Trek Generations. And regardless of what you think about that movie, right, at the ending, well, yeah, I mean, Kirk dies in the end, but he doesn't get like a really amazing, reverential send off. I mean, certainly he, you know, dies trying to make a difference, trying to change things, trying to make sure that something horrible doesn't happen, and succeeds. But like after that, Star Trek kind of went off on this more actiony, remakes, reboots, uh, you know, explosions and stuff, direction, you know, um, after that. And so this movie, 765874 Unification, is not actually the first film that this OTOY group has made for the Roddenberry Archive. But, uh, you know, when I was looking into things, I discovered that this is actually like a pretty significant effort to basically try to, like, build back or not build back, but preserve Gene Roddenberry's influence, in as the creator of Star Trek, and kind of what he did and what parts of it he was involved in. They're doing all kinds of interesting stuff, like trying to do like a reproduction of the original 1964 pilot episode for Star Trek. There's a bunch of stuff going on. I'll put a link in the description, but their very newest short video, this unification video, is basically a send off for Captain Kirk. For specifically for the Captain Kirk as mostly portrayed by William Shatner, right? Um, and yeah, it's about 7.5 minutes long. It is, and what it is it is that kind of reverential send off that Shatner's Kirk kind of didn't get. Um, maybe he did later in some way or another, but like this, that's kind of what this is the focus of. Basically, it's kind of him finding the, I don't know, it's him basically finding this. It's really simple. How do I describe it? He basically is walking through, like a grove, forested, like a grove, and he comes to a fountain, and there's a bunch of people there, and some of them are people that he knows. One of them is, I think, Lieutenant Varric from a couple of the movies, that actress, and I think the other one is Spock's father. Uh, I forget his name off the top of my head, but then he kind of walks up to a Starfleet officer who hands him a thing, and he takes the thing, and then he kind of vanishes into like this blackened void, and he gets to see a couple of versions of himself from various points in his life. And then the final scene is goes to he finds himself in this room, and he walks up, and Spock is there, laying on a bed, and he kind of gets to say goodbye to his friend that way. And I don't know, it was a good. Uh, it's one of those videos where like it doesn't produce a lot of like story content, but what it basically is a piece of like a reverential piece, right? Like we're remembering this, and we want this character who didn't get to have this amazing send off to have that kind of closure, right? Because I think the subtext is that Kirk has passed on, but in doing that he gets reunited with people that he cared about. And so it's a moving video. I'll put a link in the description. You can go watch it if you like Star Trek. I mean, I'm definitely not the biggest Star Trek fan, and I definitely have been kind of away from it for a while, right? Like, my dad is a big original series fan, and so I kind of started watching Star Trek, the original series, with him when I was a little kid. Um, he also enjoyed the Next Generation, and so I got into watching that occasionally with him as well. Kind of good memories there. I think I was too young to enjoy Deep Space Nine when it came out. It just wasn't something that I quite understood, or maybe it was something I wasn't ready for. I don't know. I watched a bit of Voyager here and there, and after that, and I watched most of the movies, at least a couple of times, and but it's been a long time since I really thought about Star Trek in a significant, like, specifically to Star Trek way, especially since the recent stuff has mostly been remakes and reboots and stuff like that, which on some level I find a little bit unsatisfying because it's interesting that the that the point behind Star Trek kind of was exploration, was the how the existence of a frontier can bring out both the best and worst of mankind, and how finding unknown new things, the act of exploration actually does, it has specific, how do I put it, like it has, there's something to it. I'm trying to work this out. I don't really have any notes or anything like that, but like, there's something about the way that people who are willing to go out of the way to explore the unknown, to to push that frontier back, to understand and to deal with in a forthright way the things that they are discovering as they push against the frontier, right? There's something about that is really compelling, right? That's I mean that's I think that's part of the reason why the Star Trek fandom became such a huge thing, is that there's something to be said about the way those shows, and specifically I'm talking about original series and somewhat the Next Generation, um, handled the act of discovery. You know some of the Star Trek episodes, of course, were not focused on this. Some of them were character episodes, or they were focused on some kind of internal, issue or something like that. But coming across a new civilization and trying, in an honest way to understand, what they're up to, and whether or not their values are compatible with something like the Federation is an interesting and broad topic, right? It's something that you can write a million stories about. And so, part of what to me I've always enjoyed the most about Star Trek is the discovery of new things, the learning of new, you know, beings, new civilizations that mankind has never interacted with, never known, and the questions that kind of stuff can precipitate are I think really interesting topics, and there's a lot to be done there, right? And Star Trek did a lot of that, right? The original series was a lot more, what would you call it, almost like there was an element of almost like like the words going through my head are gunboat diplomacy, but it's more complicated than that. It's not quite um that bad, right? It's not quite that. It's more like explorers who are sure of themselves, right? Explorers who know that what they've got is something great because it has been able to open up and press against this frontier, right? When you have that kind of success as a group, as a society, or whatever, you know that you're doing something right, probably, right? You know, there's no people who are saying we shouldn't be exploring these new empty worlds, and well, we come up across worlds that have sapient beings on them sometimes, and we have protocols for dealing with that without forcing them to be like us, but also while encouraging them to be like us because we've been successful, right? There's a sort of openness to that, right? Like, yes, we've had some successes. No, that doesn't mean that we are the answer to everything. Yes, we should try to respect the autonomy of people who are outside of our community. The next generation was a lot more about like the ethical issues, right? There were a lot of like Prime Directive episodes and stuff like that in the next generation where, the question of how these explorers should act upon contact was, I would say, more in a more nuanced, in a more reserved way handled in the next generation. Whereas, the original series was a bit more gung ho. And this is one of those things where, the original series was almost entirely Roddenberry's vision, right? Like by the time the next generation was coming around, it was 20 years after. Roddenberry had done the original series, and he worked on the next generation, but also at the same time he was pretty old, and he was starting to get kind of, pressed away from creative control of the next generation, which is not to say that there wasn't also some good writing and there weren't good writers on the next generation, but like this particular video short is made by a group that is trying to preserve Roddenberry's legacy specifically. And so, he was. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Gene Roddenberry, but if he created Star Trek, if he was the executive, if he was the original writer of, The Cage and a lot of, the Star Trek series, if he was producing, from what I understand, he cared a lot about how this stuff, existed. Getting the lines right, getting the details right. Apparently he was a very detail-oriented person, and it came out in his work on these television series. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just something I haven't really thought too much about recently, but like this video came out and made me at least kind of dig in a little bit and think and at least see what's going on. And so, this is not, I don't want to wax for an hour about different episodes of Star Trek that I've seen. We've all, if you're also someone who's watched that show in any of its incarnations, you'll have particular memories that you enjoy and particular characters that you prefer. The Kirk versus Picard argument is something that people go back and forth on a lot, and for good reason. They're different characters with different styles, but both had their own successes, kind of thing. I don't know. It's just one of those things that it was nice to see something done, respectfully and artfully, which is hard to do. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's something that oh, well, they really dropped the ball. The official Star Trek really dropped the ball by not making something like this. It's when something becomes a phenomenon like that, it becomes more difficult to do things that are kind of art house or, reverence for the sake of reverence, if that makes sense, right? Once something becomes commercial, once it becomes the property of a big, organization that is going to, handle it going forward, what's going to sell becomes an important question. And so, and then, there's always like issues of copyright. For every one person or one group making this kind of solemn reverential stuff, like OTOY is and the Roddenberry Archive is. There's 1,000 hacks making crappy fan fiction. So yeah, I'll what for anybody who is watching this who likes Star Trek, not even necessarily like a big fan, because I wouldn't say like I'm a huge fan. Like I said, I kind of fell off mostly around the end of Next Generation. I watched a little bit of Voyager. I haven't, I've seen some of the new Kirk. What's his name? Chris. I the remakes, right? The J.J. Abrams remakes. I saw those because my dad wanted to go see them, and I went to go see them in the theater with my dad. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's just something to. If you're a fan of old school Star Trek, this is something that you probably should look into. It's not just this one video, this Unification video. There's also another one called. What's it? I just looked at it. Oh my god. Like resurrection, not it's not resurrection, it's something. Anyway, there's a bunch of neat videos and a bunch of cool interviews on the site. I'm gonna link you guys to the Roddenberry Archive so you can take a look at it. That's the point, rather than me kind of getting choked up about an art, a short film. The takeaway is that there's not just this short film. There's also a lot of interviews and stuff that you might find interesting, whether you're a fan of Star Trek or not. Yeah, it's a phenomenon for a reason, and I think the reason that it became a phenomenon early on might be different from the reason it's a phenomenon now. But that's how stuff goes sometimes, and the interesting thing is that, maybe not interesting, but it also makes me think about the science fiction that I've written, which is also about people on the frontier, but it's kind of one step away in the sense that it's like people trying to help out people who had problems on the frontier, which is not the same inspiration, right? It's not the same thing. If anything, I would say I was more influenced by like Super Metroid, maybe, for like the first ideas of the Derelict project. But I don't know. Star Trek is interesting because it has a lot of. It's kind of like it's very idealistic in a lot of ways, and at the same time, some of the ideals are kind of funky, right? Like it's what would happen if mankind conquered material scarcity. And then what the problem, of course, is that people take something where people conquered material scarcity and try to take lessons from that for a world where material scarcity is very much in existence, and still a force to be reckoned with. I don't know. I'll stop rambling. Anyway, go check out the Roddenberry Archive. You'll probably find some cool videos there that you haven't seen before, including some interviews. And apparently, another thing they're doing is they're making like 3D models of like all the different Starship Enterprises and stuff like that, including like all the interior stuff and like all the like little details and stuff. And these kind of things are always really interesting too, because when fiction is allowed to get into the technical details, it becomes more like convincing, I guess. If you just have a starship and it. So when I was talking about the Interstellar, not Interstellars, or no, wasn't the book called the Doc Smith book, right? Interplanetary, right? Where like all the spaceships are just basically big undifferentiated orbs that float around, right? Like that's kind of the lowest level of technical detail that you can get. That it has like this many X guns, and even that was all kind of foggy in those books. But like once Star Trek got going, it kind of got into a lot of technical details about like how many crew members there are, what the different systems on the ships are. And that kind of technical detail in fiction is always really interesting because it makes the world more concrete, right? It makes it more like something that you can actually like visualize, as opposed to like, and not just visualize, but have your visualizations have similarity to what other people's visualizations are, if that makes sense, right? A fictional world can be so vague that everybody has vastly different images in their minds of what these things are and how they work and what they look like and how many people are on them and stuff. But when you actually start to get into the technical details of like a fictional setting, you start to make concrete those elements in everybody's minds because there's actually a source for you to say, oh well, this ship had a crew of 179 people. Each of them had a cabin in this part. Here's the number of decks. Here's the function of each different deck. Here's what armaments they had. Here's what sensors they had. And that kind of stuff is interesting because it means that the fiction around it ideally kind of takes into account these things and builds upon them in a sensible and consistent manner. And it's like a really long single cut in a movie, right? If you manage to make your world, your fictional world, exist, in reality for 20 minutes straight, with no cuts, right, in a movie, that's assuming that the world is any good, has any interesting details. First off, you kind of have to have interesting details, otherwise you're going to have, a white wall over here and a gray wall over here. But having to plan out those details means that your world has a lot of concrete details in it, and then to maintain the illusion of the fictional world is also an accomplishment, right? It's like it's the difference between how there's that in the first scenes of the Lord of the Rings, there's that one scene where there's a car way off in the background that's 3 pixels, right? It's the difference between that, where it's this is a really good scene that is just barely broken out of reality by this one tiny 3 pixel thing that goes across the corner of the screen at one point, versus, oh yeah, we made the scene and, there was it's like a future science scene, but there was a clown that just walked across the street during the take, and no one noticed him, and it got into the final cut, right? Like something like that. I don't know. Effort in fiction is generally a thing to be applauded, to be lauded, because to make a big consistent world with a lot of detail in it is much more difficult than simply throwing out whatever happens to be on the tip of your tongue or at the tip of your brain when it feels convenient, and to make up a bunch of ad hoc ad hoc justifications for random things that happen to make the story happen, as opposed to having something that actually has some structure to it. And that's one of the things I've tried to kind of do in my own fiction, is have that kind of sensible structure to things. Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling on different topics now. Go check out the Roddenberry Archive if you like Star Trek at all. And even if you don't, you might want to just check it out and just, look at a couple of the interviews. You don't need to see the actual science fiction content if you want. You can actually just see interviews with William Shatner and various other people who were involved in Star Trek while Roddenberry was working on it as well. And there's some interesting stuff there for anybody to learn, even if you don't care about Star Trek. Anyway, links in the description. That's all I've got for today. I think we're probably going to do a 3-day week because it's Thanksgiving. So, I don't know. I'll have something tomorrow and something Wednesday, and then I'll take Thursday and Friday off so that so I can relax a bit. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Yeah, live long and prosper, right? See you later. Wait, is it? I don't remember. See you later.